warriors of light. We can't quit. It's about freedom. It's not about a revival, but it's about a revolution that brings forth freedom. Your choice chooses you. Come on, warriors of light. We can't quit. Follow truth. It's not about revival, but it's about a revolution. Your choice chooses you.
Are you ready to dive deep? Let's seek together and move beyond the status quo. For the hidden things belong to the Lord. There is a generation who is no longer satisfied with playing church. This is your day. This is your hour. It's time for the real seekers to stand up and be counted. This is The Quest for Truth with your host, Corina Pataki.
Your choice chooses you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Quest for Truth. And today I am so excited to have a very, very, very special guest. You know, I want to tell you about this remarkable person here. Just a little bit about him. He is a man that has such an amazing blueprint that carries these multifacets, this beautiful, elaborate tapestry of different destiny scrolls that he has. And all of this is to awaken humanity. That's where it begins from. And I just want to introduce you to him. He is an oracle of truth for such a time as this, during a time when there is deep illusion and just so many lies. And he uses his powerful voice in such a beautiful way. It's almost like, and I was telling him that, and I was telling Wendy, my producer, it's like he paints this beautiful picture, this awakening picture that we must step into and start operating out of. I mean, he has this incredible array of things that he does, such as Lazarus Initiative, the New Earth Project. He is the founder of the International Tribunal of Natural Justice, where one of the things they do is fight against trafficking and on behalf of the children. This amazing man here is Sasha Stone. Sasha, thank you so much for being here with us. I so appreciate your time.
Well, you're very kind, and thank you for those words. But I would say that my great strength is only the fact that I have such a contempt for sock puppets masquerading as our leaders, and anything that tries to stand over the living men and women of the living soil, I find repugnant, as indeed all humans should find that repugnant. So I hope that if nothing else, I simply am a reminder to people that none of us should ever bend the knee to these lords, these popes, these principalities and powers that seek dominion over us. It's really that simple.
Yeah, and it's simple, but at the same time, you know, I love that you are a person that has chosen to step into these things, because maybe some people see it as well, Sasha, but they choose not to because of fear, because of A, B, C, D, X, Z. But you have chosen to step into this and use this remarkable gift that you have to call people to attention. You really are a warrior of truth. And the first time I heard you, it struck me so deep, because you carry such authority and yet love. So that's a remarkable combination. You have love, yet you have authority. And thank you for doing that. Thank you for waking up humanity, not to bow our knee, like you said. So thank you for that.
That's fine. And, you know, talking about why some people, most people choose not to step into their sovereign expression or step into their divinity or step into their humanness is and you mentioned A, B, C, D. Yes, it's actually A to Z. The whole spectrum is connected to one phenomenon, and that is the absence of relationship with self. And if there is not a relationship, a foundational relationship with oneself, then of course the ABC applies. But a relationship with self means that you have acknowledged and addressed your own standing under the universal gaze and owned that and stepped into your Atman, into your super nature, And then, of course, this becomes your world, and you don't seek permission from anything or anyone. Why would you? For the love of God, you are aligned with that divine flame. You don't seek permission from anything or anyone ever, and nor should you. So each of us who have any a sense of shades of gray internally, with understanding our true nature, we should ask ourselves, why is this? And then go into a bathroom, lock the door, and look in the mirror, and just stay there, observing oneself in the mirror until you've convened that relationship with self, and you start to exchange fire in the eyes with yourself, and forgive yourself as well for being such a godless coward, hiding behind the curtains or the sofa for the last 18 months. Especially, I speak here to the fathers, to the husbands, to the brothers, to the men who more than anything have shocked me to the core since the beginning of this COVID theatrical production, seeing such a singular absence of warrior spirit coming from my fellow men. This to me is, for me, one of the great revelations, and not a good revelation, a negative one. I'm just hoping and praying that that warrior spirit is actually being refined right now in suburbia to a point that it is about to erupt. Please God, I'm right in that.
Yeah, it's, that's so amazing what you're saying. And that's so true. And, in 2015, I was in Scotland, in the Hebrides on Lewis Island, and just really fast, I had this huge encounter. And what I heard coming down from heaven was very clear. God was saying, Corina, it's not about, in Christianity, it's all about revival. Well, that to me is so, it's gotten to a point where it's so ridiculous. How many times are you going to be dead and awaken and dead and awaken and revive? So what I saw was a spirit of revolution. There is a revolution that has been released, from what I saw in 2015. And you talked about revolution, but I loved the way you talked about it. It's not a revolution revolting to go break windows, to go and set things on fire. It's a revolution that starts with us, like you said, look in the mirror, get a relationship with yourself, and then step out of that to bring about a change. So talk a little bit about that, because I love your perspective on a revolution and awakening the warrior.
So we should change the emphasis from revolution altogether to revelation, because that's really what's happening. And revolution is a revolving door. That's what revolute and revolution means. It's a replay of something that's already been enacted. And that's written into the satanic or Luciferian program that we consistently get butchered and bastardized by these priest banker kings and popes, and then we fall back into a blood ritual, a blood harvest, a harvest of humanity, and then we emerge again, blinking into the daylight, and we summon our best reserves, and we start to rebuild the world after the First World War, after the Second World War, after Napoleonic Wars, and we rebuild again, and we put our coin, and we put our back into the work, and again get subjugated again by another echelon of priest bankers, and that's the cycle of revolution. So in real terms, we should absolutely withdraw our spirit from revolution, and we should only now begin to move into revelation and begin to apprehend, and more than apprehend, to bear witness to the majesty of the early onset stages of ascension, which is really what this is all about this time. This is the great bifurcation, the great tribulation, the end of days, the Armageddon, the apocalypse, the falling away of the mask of ages. It's a beautiful thing. This is where the paradigm shifts altogether. This is where we move from entropy into syntropy. This is where we move into our Christed nature. So everything is actually good right now with the geometry of unfoldment, especially because it is so dark and feels like such a twilight zone. That's a clear indicator that we're absolutely in the thrall of the detoxification. We're moving through that subterranean basement. We are cleansing it and beginning that process. So the revelation is about, yes, being in the swamp, but raising your aspect to the gods and to the heavens. And that's where we're at. But let's not make the mistake of being pulled back into another cycle of so-called revolution.
Yeah, this is so good what you're saying, because when we awaken out of the confines of being a slave and the lies and the programming, and we realize who we are, we're going to revolt against the bondage that we were put in. But that's bringing the revelation that you're talking about, which we have to understand that. But Sasha, I loved when I heard you talk about a little bit the history of humanity, because I think one of the problems may be that we as humanity, we don't really know, we don't have yet the revelation of who we really are, because we've been lied to for so long in religion, in the schools, and blah, blah, blah. So can you share a little bit about the true history of humanity, that revelation that is being unfolded right now?
Yes, but be prepared to witness the slaughter of your holy cows, of your sacred cows, as a Christian, as a Buddhist, as a Shinto, as a Muslim. So when we engage this particular conversation, which is a very seminal one, we have to be prepared to kill the sacred cows. And which is to say, the idolatry, the fact of the matter is that 90+%, possibly 99% of religious devotees in any religious order are engaged more in idolatry than they are in spiritual revelation. That's a travesty. That's an abomination. And that's the truth. Even although they may be and are invariably very, very good humans who are, banging their head on the floor in the mosque, or, doing their prayer beads and attending mass. All of that form of ritualism, it must now move into dissolution. It must. It absolutely must. There is no longer any excuse for the idolatrous aspect of Christianity or of Buddhism or of Islam. We must, as a peoples, as a sentient peoples, now transmute and transcend all the aspects of idolatry, and that up to and including handing the cathedrals and the mosques and the temples and the synagogues over to the homeless. That would be an absolute delight, in my view. We should return, if anything, back to the doctrine of the living gospel of the Master Jesus, if you're a Christian, which is to go and sit under a tree on a wooden bench. And my forebear, Oliver Cromwell, along many, many centuries ago, went in and ransacked the parliament in Britain, and with his own private army, and he threw out and chopped the head off the king at that time, the Catholic king. So for good reason, because at that time, it was quite clear to the true Christed ones that Catholicism, that the whore of Babylon, that the Vatican complex was the devil's kingdom, and it was taking over the true Christed message. So we must be very, very, very aware that we don't make the mistake of allowing ourselves any further to get indentured into idolatry. And that, I think, is going to be very difficult for people. So having said that, let me answer your question, which is the true genesis, or the cosmogenesis, the corrected history, shall we say, of humankind. Well, I don't pretend to know absolutely, because I'm not looking into the scrying dish here, but I do absolutely know that the human today, and that's you and I, are a beautiful cosmogenetic soup. We are a hybrid, a galactic and universal hybrid of the multifarious aspects of creation in this galactic plane that makes up the human genetic or gene pool. And I can prove this out under microscopy by zooming into the microbes, the microbial flora and fauna that make up your entire human form. We are microbes. Actually, we're made up of trillions to the power of trillions of microbes, all teeming around. Each one of them are very discrete from another, and they are airborne, they are spaceborne, they are light-borne, they are sound and vibration-borne. So we are a beautiful orchestration, or a cacophony of such limitless creative expression in this universal plane of existence. We must start to recognize and bear witness to the majesty of who we are, what we be. The fact of the matter is that we have now been
Hey guys, so we are back today. We had a little bit of an issue yesterday with internet, and Sasha's back with us again today, and we're just gonna pick up from where we left off. Thank you, Sasha, for being here again with us. So appreciate it.
Well, thank you for your patience, and I'm sorry the whole region went dark in Mexico yesterday. But there we go. We're back online, and I'm wearing my robes today. So forgive me for the lack of continuity. But I can pick up, I think, pretty much where we were.
Yes.
I was largely addressing sort of this Midwestern Christian mindset, and which I have a huge love and respect for, incidentally. Because that's the demographic that squarely represents that common pulse that's so vital of humanity. But I was suggesting that in the days ahead, there's going to be a seismic nervous breakdown. It's a kind of psycho-cultural breakdown in as much as we're going to have to switch paradigms. We have to move from an entropic, usurious, blood cultist, scarcity economics-based model of reality, which is the parasite, which is the false light, which is where the church went rogue. And I'm talking about all churches, all religiosity went rogue and ended up parasiting off the living men and women of the living soil. And it was the churches parasiting off the good people of the soil that eventuated into government and the machinations and the infrastructure of evil empire, which crept in the last 500 years, essentially since the papal doctrines of discovery, or the papal bulls of discovery, which was where the Catholic Church and the Vatican gave the license to the imperial crowns of Europe to go forth and conquest the whole world, which they did with impunity and massacred billions and billions of souls in the name of God, in the name of the church. Well, if that's not satanic and wicked and evil, I don't know what is. So that's the old parasitic false light aspect of the religiosity that we've been indentured into as a species. That needs to shift now into a syntropic model, away from an entropic model where death is wired into everything and entropy is wired into everything, and scarcity and fear and time and money is the stuff that takes us into the annihilation of soul, where we are then thrown into a rinse cycle of reincarnation to come back for another wheel of suffrage. That must end in our age, in our time, at this time. That's what this time is all about. It's the end of time, actually. And we could talk about that and about clocks and about TikTok 1260 and how we are also moving beyond the Gregorian and Julian expressions of the Vatican imposed time signatures, which again broke our relationship with nature and with the real cycles of nature, the circadian rhythms and the movement of the sun, moon, and stars. The moment that the church introduced a format, a metric based on 1260 time, it was a deviancy from the true quantum nature of how we were functioning and living as Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, which is indeed this exquisite world. So there's all of that we need to address. But the paradigm shift, or the seismic shift that I'm talking about, is upon us either way. Now, how do you and I navigate our way through that paradigm shift?
Yes.
Will depend on whether we have a hard landing or a soft landing. The hard landing is going to hurt like hell because it means almost certainly death, and not a fun death either. Intubation in a hospital room with mercury light bulbs and machines bleeping and no family allowed to come and hold your hand as you're departing this world. That again is satanic nonsense. And that is afflicting millions of people around the world right now, courtesy of this theatrical production that your tax dollars are allowing your government to perpetrate against you and your family. Now, wake the hell up from that dream spell, because you were the engineer of it. You are the architect of it, and you're the one granting all the permissions. I'm speaking now squarely to that good Midwest Christian demographic. Stop complying. Stop giving your permission at every level for that kind of travesty, that kind of abomination to rip the fabric of your soul and your family's relationships. So that's what we've done. We've given the permissions to the Leviathan, otherwise known as the church and the state, which is the same thing. And the church and the state is the bank, let's be clear. And the bank is the bench. And that's connected to men in black robes from the Bar Association, all connected to Saturnian logic and wearing their black robes and the little, it's all encoded into Babylonian Mysterium cult black magic. So moving away from that paradigm into this new paradigm, this emergent, Christed new earth, so to speak. That is where we're predisposed to move into through this tribulation, through this abomination, and through this revelation. So let's just, and the hard landing is almost certain death and a lot of pain. And a lot of pain. Or the soft landing is where you and I decide now that we're going to consciously awaken or activate within this thrall, this dream spell. And we're going to be the ones who are going to now consciously navigate ourselves, our beloveds, our children, our family, our kin, our community. We're gonna actualize and walk together through into the new earth. We're not going to comply. We're not going to pay coin to Caesar any longer unless we're doing commerce. If you're doing commerce, that's fine. Pay your commercial taxes. That's entirely proper. And I keep saying it. Business taxes are fine. Commercial taxes are fine. Personal income tax is satanic nonsense. Stop it. You are paying creature that is bombing kids in the Yemen and blowing their heads off, and you will have that on your conscience. Your government is out of control because your government is owned by the banksters, the central banksters, and the central banksters are owned by a Babylonian cult. And that Saturnian cult understands only how to degrade and defile and to desecrate humanity. And that's what it's doing all around the world. 80 plus wars taking place all around the world. Did you know that? Not many people care enough. And how many billions of souls caught up in perpetual cycles of suffrage? Enough. We've got the biological technologies right now to remediate all of the ills of the world. We've got the innovation technologies to be able to remediate the air, the soil, the water, and bring this planet back in 5 years. If by my reckoning, 5 years, 60 months, and we could bring the world back into a paradise using the innovations and the solutions that we've got extant today. And I'm not just a robed hippie in Mexico talking. I'm also a former director general in the intergovernmental sector at the United Nations 10 years ago. I've got 23, 24 years of diplomacy and understanding the machinations and the myth of power. We don't need any of that bullshit, friends. We need to reconvene our covenant with one another, with the living soil and with the electric universe.
So Sasha, what you're saying, just for those of you watching, and I know quite a large audience is a Christian background. So what you're saying, Sasha, is that Jesus, the reason that, let's just look at Jesus, the reason Jesus came is to really show us who we are, our sovereignty, our power, that we're not slaves, that we have total power, that we have total control, and it's up to us to create the reality that really he wants for us to walk in, not the slave mentality. So what you're saying is, to Christians and non-Christians, whoever's watching, get the heck up and realize who you are, walk in it and create that, and no longer bow your knee to the programming and the systems that are there that are trying to control through fear, manipulation. And also what you said, Sasha, is so crucial, because I've been saying that also to the ones that I'm so blessed to be able to speak in their lives, is like there's a shaking happening. There is a shaking that's happening at the very foundation of Christianity. And that's what you were saying. There's this complete upside down, just a shaking and awakening. Because Sasha, for me personally, there are things that I grew up believing. And now when I look back with new eyesight, I'm like, oh my gosh, that is what we're fighting against, the bloodshed, the slavery. So what you're saying is, in a sense, Jesus came to show us who we are, not to form religion that binds us, puts chains on us, but to awaken the reality of who we are. Is that kind of what you're...
So the what issued after the death of Yeshua, what issued after his death was 300 years of the Roman Empire conflating itself on his blood and his bones. And from the Mount in Gethsemane to the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, you've got this extraordinary phenomenon where you were really seeing the slow death of the Roman Empire. And it had already done its wrought its supremacy around as much of the earth as it could. It reached a point where it was running out of steam.
Yeah.
And what they did at that time was recognize that the new emergent theme amongst the people living, the good people of the soil who were living within the jurisdiction of the Roman Empire, those people themselves were getting back to working with the soil, and they were Christians. They were people that the message of Jesus was growing. It was the one thing that was growing in contrast, in diametric proportion to the degree to which the Roman Empire was dying. And they were smart enough to see that the Christed message was the thing that was growing. And so what they did, somewhat cynically in my view, was call for the Council of Nicaea and sit around like a bunch of technocrat banksters and work out how best they could co-opt the message of Jesus and flip the script and turn it into their own narrative. And that's what they did. And so then you've got the purging and the death of the Cathars, which occurred, which was the real keepers of the flame of Christianity. So they were then massacred and got out the way, because they would have protested on behalf of Master Jesus what was happening, and they were protesting it. God loved them, and they could see that that the Christed Christian message was being weaponized and turned into an industrial dream spell. And it was a diabolical phenomenon that they saw emerging. They spoke against it. They were butchered. And the Roman Catholic Church then essentially became the Vatican complex, which was really through infiltrating the crowns of Europe, not just Europe, but actually the crowns and the emperors of all nations of the world, the Chinese, the Mongols, all of them were variously infiltrated by the Jesuits, ultimately, who were operating through, again, the jurisdiction of the Vatican or the Catholic Church. And it was essentially, or ultimately, the Jesuits and the Jesuitical tradition, which issued from that godless, a Saturnian little creature, Ignatius Loyola, a diabolical creature, in my view. That the infiltration of the bedchambers of the kings and queens and emperors of old was the smart thing that they did, because what happened was the little Jesuit priests who had won favor and the trust of the kings and queens and emperors, because they came in pretending to be humble, wanting no coin, wanting no gold, wanting no women, wanting no title. And so they inveigled themselves into the affections and the trust of the kings and queens and emperors of old, which was a very smart move, but it was all by design. And so ultimately they crept into the bedchambers, where in the bedchambers of the kings and queens, as the confessor priests of the kings and queens and emperors of old, they were able to listen in on the whispers going in the royal courts. and they could begin to work out who was doing what, who was thinking what, who was screwing who. They got all the information. It was data retrieval, which they sent back to their superior general in Rome, the Black Pope. And that's how the genesis of the modern deep state, military industrial complex, deep state, and the invisible hand issued, and the intelligence community, CIA, MI5, Mossad, all of that issues directly off that. You've got a seminal character, Sir Francis Walsingham under Queen Elizabeth I, who was a seminal character, and then John Dee as well, a very character worth looking into under Queen Elizabeth I's reign, who brought also black magic, occultism, and scrying into this phenomenon. And this, I don't want to throw too much into the soup, just to say that the intelligence complex is directly married and connected to black magic. Black magic is directly connected to intelligence gathering, and the evil manipulations that have gone on in the basement, courtesy of the Vatican courtesy of the Council of Nicaea. Okay, so, and the Council of Nicaea was where the script of Jesus was flipped and weaponized, and everything that has been traded as gospel, as doctrine, has been in a sense dead since that time. This is the piece that good Christians are going to need to awaken to. The sheer generational idolatry that they have been, with the best will in the world, indentured into, them and their ancestors for so long. It is now time for the true resurrection of the Christed principle, the Christed light, the Christed, those of us who are standing in alignment with that flame of Genesis, the original one, which was the living gospel, which was not dogma and doctrine and scripture. To hell with dogma and doctrine and scripture. To hell with faith and trust and hope and belief. These things never serve the living souls. We need to know, we need to sense, we need to feel, we need to be, we need to claim, we need to own, we need to embody, we need to enact, we need to manifest. These are the tools of the Christed ones, not idolatry, not indentureship, not acquiescence and bowing and taking the knee to popes and princes and principalities. Move away from all of that, all of that. And that is what the message now, the re-emergent or the regenesis of that Christed light speaks to that, to Sovereignty 101. And to answer your question, and I forgive you for being so long-winded. You're absolutely right. This is exactly what the Master Jesus, in my knowing, not belief, my knowing, my relationship with the principle, that's exactly what he stood for at the time. And can you imagine walking around on the cobbled streets of the Roman Empire at that time in the Levant? Can you imagine how that enlightened avatar must have felt looking out at these stupid people indentured into such idolatry and blood cult and ritualism? It must have been such a painful thing to witness and to work through it. And yet things like, you know, overthrowing the tables of the moneylenders, that's a polite way of saying he was fucking angry, and for good reason, and went in to say, "Get thee behind me, Satan, you usurers, you Shylocks, you Sabbateans, get out of my temple." Absolutely correct. But that's the same thing today. And we, each of us, are required now to lay claim to that flame of sovereignty and throw this devil off our back. And your devil, friends, is government.
Wow, Sasha, I'm so fired up. I can barely sit still. Just because what you're saying is so reverberates and so much truth. So for all of you watching, please get out of your religious boxes and hear the voice of truth. Okay, hear what he's saying here. We have made the Bible an idol. Listen to me, all of you watching that have the Christian background. This is your time of awakening. You have to make a choice. When you are being told that your personal relationship with God, your personal relationship with Jesus means nothing. Because if it does not line up with words of man and their experiences, it's nothing. Then something is wrong, because like Sasha said, Jesus came to show us who we are. And when you let somebody else's opinion dictate to you who you are, there's a problem. And that's why Sasha, oh my gosh, oh, I'm so shaking at my core. You know, years ago when God told me that there has been built a trading floor, a evil, demonic, nasty, putrid trading floor on the blood of the children, on their flesh, under our noses, because we bound our knee to this entity that has nothing to do with life, that has nothing to do with love. Like you said, it's all with control, death, blood, all of that. And that's why this floor, this trading floor, was able to be built, because we have so been asleep. We have been in spiritual amnesia. I'm talking about also for Christians, a lot of it, bound by these rules, this programming. And you guys, it's time for us to wake up. And this is why I love what Sasha does. And that's why I felt it in my heart for quite a while now to bring him on here, to let you hear the truth that comes out of this man. And it's not about religion, you guys, it's about relationship. That's what Sasha's saying. And I love Sasha. Yesterday, you were talking about relationship. And one of my notes here was relationship. Jesus has not come to establish religion. He came to establish relationship with ourselves, with him. So I love it, Sasha. I love you're releasing a clarion call, an awakening to step up and do what we must do. Because like you said, what we're facing right now, Sasha, is a cosmic war. So what do you have? So you're talking about the dark occultic government that is hand in hand with religion. So we have this battle to face, but also there's a battle in the cosmos, right? So we're having two separate things coming against humanity. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, you can look at it that way. It's an interesting way of looking at it, and I'm happy to dive into it. Mm-hmm. But first, let me just take your audience back to what you said a moment ago about the trading floor. Mm-hmm. So that's good. That's a very good analogy that you used, and that's exactly correct. But I want to bring this into sharp focus for your audience. Mm-hmm. The trading is taking place connected to the bonds and the spells that we and our parents and grandparents have permission. Those bonds and spells are connected into anything and everything that you have allowed, or your parents or grandparents have allowed, to become registered. When you register a birth or a death or a wedding or a farm or a tractor or a bicycle, you are offering that up to Regis. Register is to Regis. Regis is Rex. Rex is the king. The king wears a crown. The crown is Cronus. Cronus is the titan that devours its own young.
Oh, wow.
This is the etymology of registration. You are offering yourself up for harvest, for sacrifice. You must stop registering. You must stop filling out the spells and the bonds. You must stop writing your name out in block black capital letters where you are told you are required to do it, because you are engaging the contract with the devil every single time you are licensing or registering yourself to anything ever. That is the way it is. And that is part of the black magic that has been orchestrated by these pointy-hatted wizards over a long period of time. So understand, spells and bonds proliferate everywhere, and they keep dropping in through the brown envelopes with the little window into onto your carpet at your front door. Really start to understand that this is how we have been harvested and brought into the invisible contracts. That must end. The registration of living souls at the time of birth into a registration certificate or a certificate of live birth, which is then flipped into a birth registration certificate. Those certificates are essentially turned into trusts that is corporatizing the living. You are being turned into a corporation. Your baby that you've just registered, as the parent, you've offered the infant up to the crown. You've offered it up to Cronus, the thing that will now devour it, literally. And the moment you've signed that and put your baby's footprint on that paper or their handprint, you have essentially indentured the soul of that child to Cronus, to the crown. That's how it works. And that registration certificate will be flipped into a birth bond. That birth bond is essentially a US Treasury bond, in your case, in the United States, or in Mozambique, or wherever you are in the world, Peru. This becomes a bond that is held by your the Treasury Department in your country, connected to the central bank. The central
Wow.
bank, of course, is owned by the Bank of International Settlements, the IMF and the World Bank, and those other multilateral interests control the clearinghouse through the Crown of England, the Federal Reserve, the US Treasury Department. But it all goes back to the Crown of England. All of the registrations and the indentureships are held in trust by the Queen of England, in this case, the Crown of England. And the Crown, or Cronus, holds it on behalf of the Vatican, the Black Papacy. So we're talking about, again, ritual Satanism, Luciferianism, black magic, all this stuff that you and I, good humans and good Christians, good Jews, good Muslims, all find an abomination. We have all been indentured into it by stealth. The registration of living souls is where it begins and where it ends. That must end in our time. So that's the true trade. And the bonds, just so you know, the treasury bonds that you are flipped into make money. You're traded on the stock markets of the world as a collateral, because your birth bond becomes part of the collateral of your central bank. Your government is playing casino with your bond, and it's making money. So you've generated millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars has been raised against your birth bond in illicit trading that you've never been privy to. And the social contract tells you that, you're a citizen of the country, so they give you perks and benefits. They'll give you national health insurance, or they'll vaccinate you freely, or they will pick you up off the street, America's become a travesty with the national health, but other parts of the world, like in Britain, you get taken care of by the national health. But that's the perks and the benefits of being a citizen. What they don't tell you is that they are withholding the value of your treasury bond. They are playing casino with it. They're never disclosing to you the amount of money that you make or are worth, that every child that is born is worth a percentage of the commonwealth of that country. And that child should have that money allocated into its own bank account, so that that child can grow that fund and do what it wants with it. That's how it should work. But no, Cronus, the governments steal that commonwealth, they apportion it, and they flick crumbs in your face for the rest of your life. If you only knew, people, if you only knew. That's how you're traded on the stock markets, to use the metaphor that Corina brought up earlier. So let's bring this now to the next part of the equation, which I can't quite remember how you framed the question. Do you want to do it again?
Yes, absolutely. Oh my goodness. So we're battling, in a sense, two different battles. They're not two, they're working together, but we have the government or evil, the cabal, with the religion working hand in hand. And then we also have the other from the outside in the cosmos.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. So yes, you're in a sense painting a picture that we are sandwiched from below and from above. So all that speaks to is the fact that we inhabit a binary universe, which is predicated on the principle of duality, of light and shade, of good and evil, of male and female, of up and down, of left and right, of Republican and Democrat, of believer and non-believer, of masked and unmasked, of vaccinated and unvaccinated. So everything that plays out in this domain has been predicated on duality. And the trial of separation that each one of us has had to navigate at the soul level over multiple incarnations has been to learn to understand that ultimately, as Nietzsche reminded us in his life's work, is beyond good and evil, that the real the real thing is beyond good and evil, that we must learn to understand that good and evil, light and shade, sun and moon, male and female, all of that dichotomy and paradoxical, those elements are there in order to oscillate and to constantly create a kind of a war zone or a vibration or a movement, an exchange that is creates the texture or the background upon which you and I are thereby required to forge our character and the essence of who we are, who we be.
Wow.
So one needs to arrive at a point where you stop looking at things in that binary way and saying, that's good, that's evil. And that's why the master teaches us that we should not judge. Thou shalt not judge. That is the single most important, in my view, message that comes out of Christian doctrine. Thou shalt not judge. Because judgment is to condemn. To condemn is to place yourself over something and to seek supremacy or dominion over another. And this is foundationally wrong. We will never create a harmonium in that way. Judging a situation is foundationally wrong. To bear witness is fine. To see something for what it is and to know it to be good or evil, but not to judge it. You see, to judge is to identify with it and to then get involved in the politicking. And that's when it starts to go really bad. Yeah.
Interesting.
Just the state of I am, the state of witness, to know what is right and wrong.
Oh, that's good, Sasha. That's really good to know what is good.
Not to believe.
Yeah, that's so good, Sasha. So good. So, Sasha, why do you think that Earth is so important? Why is all this war? Why from the Earth and why from the cosmos? Why is there? What do they see in humanity that is so valuable that they're trying to attack from every direction?
So they are us and we are they, and they are the creatures of the Almighty. Right. All falls within the universal gaze of the Alpha and the Omega. Let's not forget all of it, all of these, alpha draconius reptile creatures that inhabit different galactic planes and to some great extent infiltrated this galactic plane and have been part of our story. Satan, the devil, the dragon, all of that is part of our cosmogenesis. The aliens and the Pleiadians and the Arcturians and the Andromedans and the Alpha Centaurians and the Syrians and the Orions. I could go on and on and on. All of these incredible creatures and beings and intelligences that exist in a multiplicity of domains. Hyperdimensionally, subdimensionally, it's a beautiful, limitless cauldron of creation. Okay. So that's this cauldron of creation within which we find ourselves. I refer to it as the abyss. I think all of that is taking place within the abyss. And the abyss is a kind of firewalled, hyper-compartmentalized aspect of the omniverse, within which the fabric of soul emerges and grows and is forged. And we, the sons and daughters of God, the Adamites, are all of us, in that sense, the Christed ones, because we are the ones who elected at the soul level to fall into the void, not because we were being punished, because we were courageous enough to enjoin the trial of separation and depart from the principle of prior unity at one point in the genesis of time. And we elected to fall back into the void in order to what? In order to emerge as the covenant within the abyss, and in this plane of existence accrete into Tara, Earth, Gaia, this incredible crystalline planet that is the Christed principle at the planetary level. So this Earth plane becomes the diamantine, the quanta of the divine in the abyss. And of that, over hundreds and hundreds of millions and millions and millions, in fact, billions of years, this Christed principle accretes into what it is. This living conduit, this telephone, this telegraphy that goes straight to Alpha. There is no disconnect between the Godhead and this earth plane.
Wow.
And then over time, and the motions and the inertia of hot and cold and pressure conditions and limitless expressions of life at the microbial level, moving into the mammalian, moving into ultimately us, human beings, we emerge off the surface of the earth, off the surface of the earth, okay? And we have 2 hands and 2 feet and 1 face and 1 body. But what are we? Foundationally, we are the galactic hybrid. So we are the genetic interventionism of all of those Alpha Draconis, Alpha Centaurus, all of these incredible far-flung expressions have variously, through the void, through the abyss, they have found attunement to this plane of existence over billions of years, and they've come into this earth plane. We are of seminal importance to all of them. Do you know why? Because we are the Jacob's ladder. Because this plane is what brings them back into covenant with God, with Alpha Omega. And it's only through us, the noble, sullied Adamites, that all of those very advanced intelligences will ultimately find their way back home through us, because we are the living Christ at once. That is it. That's how important we are as humans. That's how important the human experiment is. That's how important the human condition is. We are the Alpha and the Omega, albeit we are operating at 2 or 3% of capacitance. Now, once we move into the true reemergence, which is the galactic, the light field of light that is now converging with us, as we move into the so-called ascension, and the ascension is a descension of the grace of God.
Wow.
Moving into covenant with us as we awaken within our dream spell consciously and move toward it. So the ascension comes from us, the descension is the grace of God, and where we meet is the first rung in the step of ascension. And that's what we're about to meet in our time, within the next 20, 25 years, for sure.
Oh my gosh. Wow, Sasha, this is incredible. Absolutely incredible. Wow. So just jumping from that place of where you just landed, what does it look like? What will ascension, in your view, or this this new earth, what would it look like? What can people expect to happen in it?
So it looks like the background behind you. I'm being challenged. It looks like the highest and most noble expression that your imagination and my imagination is capable of. It is the highest octave of our expression, individually, jointly, severally, collectively. And how we ideate a world that no longer understands or identifies with pain, no longer identifies with suffrage in any way, shape, or form, no longer identifies with blood cult or blood spilling, no longer identifies with the trial of separation, no longer identifies with loss or with sorrow or with anything that is not beautiful and elevated into art, beauty, and consciousness. That's where we're taken. In much the same way, Corina, that when your grandmother dies, she is received into the bosom of the grace of God. Whether or not she's going to be thrown back into the reincarnation rim cycle is immaterial. She is still received into the bosom of God in the way in which she envisions it. So, and the way in which you envision it is what will meet you in the bosom, in the cradle of the Godhead once you leave this body. That's part of the grace of God, is to always receive us on death. And then possibly we're attuned to a special dispensation of hell or of heaven for a period of time before we're thrown back into the rim cycle. And is there a great big cosmological, extraterrestrial Yaldabaoth type complex, which is in charge of recycling our souls? Yes, absolutely. Are we being sucked into a black box on the far side of the moon? It's a very, very likely. It's very, very likely that that is the case. The moon is a mutant technology that didn't exist 13,000 years ago. There's no record of the moon pre-existing the last semi-arc of the grand precession of the equinox, where it was almost certainly brought in or dragged into our orbit. And if you understand the science of the moon, the metric of the moon, the math connected to it, and all of the NASA experiments that have happened in the last half a century, you'll know that the moon is entirely artificial, and it's not the divine feminine. On the quite the contrary, it is a cross-dressing transgender deviant uncle, a male dressed up as a female, and it's seeking to present itself as the feminine, as the female, as the divine feminine. But all the moon acts as an intercession between the sun and the earth. It literally blocks the umbilical. It cuts us off. If the moon were to leave, it would bring about the Eden, or the paradise lost. The raging oceans would return to placid lakes. The world's harsh climates would move into a beautiful subtropical environment the whole time for everyone. We'd move back into an incredible, very different paradigm. But that's another story. We can talk about that possibly in another conversation.
Yes, yes.
But these are parts of the great dream spell that we need to awaken to. There is no mention of the moon that's older than about 13,000. You don't find it in the petroglyphs and the cave paintings. All the other stars are there, but not the moon. How could that possibly be when it's so big? Yeah, right. So that's connected also to a part of our story that a lot of people are going to have a hard time waking up to. Because again, the Bible, since it's been rewritten, has also codified logic and reason according to a kind of Cartesian, Newtonian, Einsteinian model, which does not actually equate to the true divine quantum of reality. Anyway, I've gone slightly off track.
No, love it. I'm absolutely loving it. Sasha, for people, I'm going to ask you two more questions, if you don't mind, if you can still hang with us just for two more questions. What people that are watching right now, they're being awakened. They're like, or smacked in the face with a 2x4 going, what? And they want to step into this awakening process. They want to be part of this, this new wave of reality that we're supposed to bring in. And they're like, I don't know how to do it. What is like a simple way, even though nothing is really, really simple, but what can they start doing? Where do they begin? Let's do it like that. Where do they begin to start?
So I came up with an algorithm for this years ago, and I'm not going to change it. It's the same algorithm I've been spouting for years, because I know it's the one, it's the correct one. And it's the one that any one of us can deploy right here, right now, with no difficulty. You don't need to sign up. There's no subscription. You don't need to mortgage your children. This is something you can do whether you're blind, deaf, or impoverished. This is something you can do whether you're a king or a pauper. And that is to stand in the flame of pure truth and conduct right action in the living moment, which is the now, the now within which you are awake and aware of being in the now. That's the living moment. That's the living now. Pure truth and right action in the living now is the path of least resistance to the highest outcome in any situation ever. Alpha, Omega. So that's it. All you need to do is not try to go out now and study the Upanishads or the Mahabharata or Kabbalah or read the Testament from cover to cover. You're not going to find it there. Stop looking for a path to follow. Stop looking for gurus to revere. Stop looking for dogma or scriptures or gospels to follow. Stop looking outwardly at anything. And stop following the enchantment of idolatry and of iconography. Stop, in my view, I'll tell you quite plainly, stop going to those godless evangelical churches, which are vast technologies that are harvesting soul. Stop doing it. Stop indenturing your life force, your time and motion, and your coin into these diabolical enterprises, which may bring about some momentary sense of jubilation, and some feeling of kind of auto-induced euphoria, but this is the work of the devil. Oftentimes, more often than not, you're actually attuning yourself to the devil's work. Be careful, very careful. Temples, cathedrals, synagogues are the same thing as football stadiums and rock and roll stadiums, and cinemas. They are technologies designed to harvest the psycho-emotional, psychosexual energy of human beings into a spiral vortex through that stadium, through that euphoria, that false light euphoria of a football team fighting against another football team, and all of the jubilation and the misery that goes in to that stadium, into that event, is a harvest wheel, and it's literally harvesting the psycho-emotional and psychosexual energy, or the kundalini, the unutilized kundalini of those people. Tens of thousands of them is feeding into a dielectric vortex, and then literally infusing and feeding the lower astral realms for demonic interventionism. That's how we keep being plugged into the demonic and the diabolical, because we are not purposefully attuning our mind's eye, our plasma projection, our capacity to create and to make things and to ideate. We're not purposing that towards the elevation of our species, or the elevation of art, beauty, and consciousness, which is what we're born to do and to be. We are simply allowing ourselves to become indentured into appetite, base appetite, addictions. Addiction to sex is addiction to football, is addiction to television, is addiction to money, is addiction to death. It's addiction to a death spiral. It's because a death spiral, which is you eating too many donuts and drinking fizzy drinks and masturbating too much and being angry and being reflexive and being psycho-emotionally violent to your family or to your friends. All of that is connected to the same phenomenon, which is an absence of relationship with self, with the Christed element of who you are, who you truly be. And so when one allows oneself to be pulled away from convention with oneself, then one allows oneself to be led into appetites and addictions. And that's what then creates psychosis and dystopia. And then ultimately you go crazy, or your body responds by giving you a cancer to deal with, and says, hey, I'm walking you off the shelf right now, and gives you an opportunity to address what's really going on. If at that point you're stupid enough to fall into the victim mode, oh my God, why me? You're fucked, you're dead. Mm-hmm. But if you have the courage and the conviction and the grace at that point to go, okay, these are my cells speaking to me. Listen, I'm pretty badly damaged right now today, and I didn't sleep last night because I fell off a horse yesterday. And it was bad, and I was bleeding for 8 hours. Not a joke, not good at all. And I had to ask myself, through a long night of not being able to sleep and being in a hell of a lot of pain, I had to ask myself why. I communicate with horses, have my whole life. And I want to ask myself, in pure truth, what was that covenant with me and the horse? Why did I have such a bad accident yesterday? And because I don't have accidents.
Yes.
And when it happens to me, I really am pulled into a singularity to communicate with the ethers and communicate, in this case, with the horse. And I think I kind of worked it out overnight what it was. And it's given me a whole new kind of energy moving forward. But the point I'm making is that we need to listen to ourselves.
Yes.
Whenever anything happens that's uncomfortable or hurts, it's not a punishment necessarily. Oftentimes, actually, it's a benediction. Oftentimes, it's a blessing disguised as a slap. And as long as one knows how to decode life without feeling that you're the victim, and without, oh, why me, oh Lord, and falling into that vortex, you will always walk away from any engagement in life with the benediction. So that's my last word on the matter.
That's Sasha. That's incredible. And all of you watching, my heart's desire is that you hear this truth that is coming out. And that not only that you hear, but you let it penetrate deep down into your spirit, into your soul, into your heart, and you let it produce what it must produce in order for you to do what you must do. It's your choice. Like Sasha was saying, we all have choices. So Sasha, thank you so much for your time. Thank you that, you know, you came with us today. I'm so sorry of what happened, but thank you that you came. And you guys, if he was able to press through, no matter what you're facing in your life, you can press through it. But again, like what Sasha said, not from the position of a victim, but from the position of knowing who you are and looking at every circumstance. And for us Christians, we know the scripture that says all things work together for good. So looking at the situation, like what Sasha was talking about, what he's literally experiencing now, and saying, okay, I'm learning something from this. So don't look at it bad, look at it as a stepping stone into the next that you're supposed to walk into. So Sasha, thank you so, so much. Thank you for being with us. And I would love to be able to have you on again to talk about some other stuff that you mentioned.
Very happy to do so, Corina, and thank you for the kind words. I'm very happy to explore the so-called aliens, so-called ET, demonic element to the Christian mind. I think it's an important piece, and I've got some, I think, valuable insights there. So very happy to take forward any conversation, and much love to you. God bless.
So thank you guys so much for watching. We so appreciate Sasha's time and the truth that he has revealed to us. We will put his information where you can find him, follow him at the end of this video. So you guys, please subscribe, like, and share. If this has blessed you, subscribe, like, and share. And I want to encourage all of you that have watched this, just allow yourself to come out of any box, any mentality that you have been bound in, and step outside of it and step into the fullness of who God created you to be, the fullness of the authority and the power that is inside of you, so that you can actually walk out your blueprint in fullness and totality. So thank you again all for watching, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.